Hello, my name's Element. Welcome to Parker. Beep. Hello, welcome to Element. My name's Parker. It's another week of us going through the book of Mark. This is Mark chapter 4. Once again, we're talking about Jesus calming the storm. The disciples are super afraid, and then he calms the storm, and then they get even more afraid. What's that all about? I don't know. We'll talk about it. I am terrified of spiders. If you were to, there's two types of people in the world. There's people who are afraid of snakes, and it's usually it's usually snakes or spiders. Like, I'm fine with snakes. Gardener snakes is no big deal. It's fine. Even if there was like a bull snake or like a rattlesnake, I'd just be like, I'll just go the other way. It's fine. If there was a spider in the room I'm in, I am petrified. Like, I've walked into my garage and there's been a wolf spider on the wall, and my first reaction is genuine. Like, this is just where my heart is. I walk in and I see it. I lock eyes with its 18 eyes or whatever, and I go, why? Why you? Why here? Why now? Why me? And then I gotta do something about it. Like, I can't sleep that night if I know that spider is in my garage, let alone in my house or in my room. And so I've figured out ways that I can take care of, I won't eliminate a spider without being close to it. And a blowtorch does help. I'm just saying. But I'm just kidding. I have never used them. I would use a blowtorch. If you want to lend me a blowtorch, let me know. That's how I would like to deal with spiders. What are you afraid of? Everybody's got a little phobia, you know what I mean? I actually was really interested in the idea of phobias and what they were. So I looked up just a few to let you in on them. Just in case you ever run across people like this, at least you'll know which phobia they have. First up is Optophobia. It's a fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth. Rational. Love it. Second, nomophobia, which is different from phomophobia, which is probably the fear of missing out. This one, nomophobia, is no phone. You don't have any signal, you don't have any battery, you don't have any Wi-Fi. Terrified. Nomophobia. Third, arithmophobia. I think I genuinely have this one. This would be people who cry in math class because it just hurts. Math just hurts. And some of you are like, I don't understand that. Well, why don't you color a picture and make it look good? Or why don't you do a painting of your feelings? I could do that. But when it comes to math, looking at numbers, I want to weep. Next one, optophobia. Fear of just opening your eyeballs. Gonna be a long journey. And you're missing out on so many pretty things. But I guess the whole idea of phobias is that they don't make sense. Here we go. This is the mother of all phobias, probably. We got phobophobia. That's the fear of phobias. Where does that cycle end? That's just an endless circle. Here we are in the crazy cycle. I'm afraid of being afraid of being afraid of being afraid of being afraid. Last one. I think this is the meanest one. This is probably a bully who named this one. This is hippopotopmonstrosiequipedaliophobia. That is the fear of long words. The fear of long words. We all have phobias. We're all afraid of things. And there's some things that we're afraid of that really we shouldn't be. But there's something in us, there's something about our story, there's something about our lives that make us so afraid of things that we won't move, we won't act, we won't trust that everything's going to be okay. Maybe you're afraid of speaking in front of people. Maybe you're afraid of driving. Maybe you're afraid of being alone. Maybe you're afraid of things in life. Here's my whole point. You're afraid of things in life that are holding you back. That maybe there's better things to be afraid of, if that makes sense. And so we get caught up on these fears that hold us back. In this story in chapter 4 of Mark, I want to read this next, and then I kind of want to talk about what's going on, because I think it's fascinating. There's probably about 5 or 6 different sermons you could do just on this chunk of scripture, but I really just want to talk about fear. And you'll see what I'm talking about. This is Mark chapter 4, 35 through 41. This is the New Living Translation. So Jesus gets done teaching. He's been teaching all day long. And as evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they're getting in the boat and they're going with Jesus. There's people who stayed that did not go. There's people who got in boats and went. So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats did follow. But soon a fierce storm came up. high waves were breaking into the boat and it began to fill with water. This was, in other translations, it says a squall came up. And us Nebraskans, we know exactly what that looks like. It's like bright, sunny, it's kind of humid, there's like a weird feeling in the air, and then all of a sudden it looks like a huge shark fin that's like 18 miles wide is just moving at you at 80 miles an hour. And you know, on the other side of that shark fin in the sky is something violent. Like it's either going to be super windy, the rain's going to be super hard, there's probably hail. Like there's all sorts of bad news that's on the other side of that squall. And so here they are in a boat halfway across. It's probably night, which makes it even scarier, right? And once again, we've actually talked about this earlier this year, that when you're on boats in this day and age, they really believe that this is where God and evil battle, is on the water. And so this is a very, very fearful, very emotional experience. And the next part says Jesus was sleeping in the boat with his head on a cushion. Isn't that crazy? Like, all this is happening. First of all, it shows Jesus is human. He's just worn out. He's been preaching, teaching, healing all day. Like, he needs some sleep. But second of all, he's not afraid. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I want you to remember tonight as you hear all this teaching, is that whatever you're afraid of, God's not afraid of it. Whatever you're afraid of doing, Jesus isn't afraid of leading you through that. Whatever we're afraid of on this side of heaven, Jesus isn't afraid. He's not getting spooked. He's not getting intimidated. He knows exactly what's going to happen and has power over all of it. And we'll see that in this next part of this story. The disciples woke him up and said, Jesus, teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown? Like, do you have any idea what's going on? And when Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the waves, and he said, silence, be still. And it's easy to imagine like a grumpy Jesus. You know, you like wake Jesus up and he's like, what? What do you want? Big deal. Shut up, waves. I don't know. That's not consistent with how loving and caring and patient he is. It was probably more of like a, stop. Just calm down. Everybody just, waves, wind. Just hold on a second. And then the waves immediately, like the wind immediately stops. Suddenly the wind stopped. It wasn't like it calmed down over the next hour like it does when it goes through Nebraska. And there was great calm. And then he says, what were you so afraid of? Do you remember who you're with? Like, do you remember faith? Do you have any faith? Where'd your faith go in that moment? And he kind of uses this as this teaching of like, maybe you're afraid of the wrong things. Because here's the interesting part. The disciples were not afraid anymore. It switches to say they're absolutely terrified. So they went from afraid, self-diagnosed by Jesus, to absolutely terrified. And they thought, who is this guy? Like, we've seen him heal lepers, we've seen him heal people, do miracles, like heal sick people, do all these things. Now all of a sudden it becomes very apparent that he's in control of the universe. Like, he is the video game programmer of everything in reality, and he has control over all of it. They were absolutely terrified. Said, who is this dude? That even the wind and the waves obey him. So I think the biggest thing we gotta look at is that there's healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear. Healthy fear looks like being aware that there's an electric fence near you. Like, I'm going to avoid that. I have a healthy fear of electric fences. It'll sure wake you up. I have a healthy fear of heights. I don't want to be up high where it's not secure. That doesn't feel good to me. I got a healthy fear of that. Like, being at the Grand Canyon, I was like, I'm going to be a little bit just back here. Like, you've never seen heights, like if you've been to the Grand Canyon. If you ever go, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So those are examples of healthy fear. Fear keeps us alive. Like, fear is a good thing. But there's also unhealthy fears, things that we don't need to be afraid of. And the best example I could think of this experience that the disciples were having, of this perspective shift of what they should actually be afraid of, is like, okay, so imagine that a train, your car stalled out. You're with one of your best friends, your car stalls out on a train track, and you're seeing the train coming, and you're afraid of trains already. You're afraid of train tracks already. But then all of a sudden, your friend literally turns into the Hulk, like big, green, angry, everything. And then they just pick up the car, move the car, and then they Hulk down, and then they get back in the car. You're not afraid of that train anymore. You're terrified of your best friend, and you're like, who are you? where did that come from? What, I don't, you see what I'm saying? Like the fear changes. And so when you're with that person now, you're not necessarily afraid of what you used to be afraid of. So if you're with your best friend and you come into a situation where you don't feel safe, you're not afraid of the situation that's not making you feel safe. You're more afraid, in a good way, of that person who's so much more powerful than you'd ever imagine. That's what these disciples are experiencing with Jesus. Like, they're almost starstruck. I think that's a good example of what they're feeling here. Like, it's a healthy fear of going, this person is more amazing than I ever thought they were. And yeah, absolutely, I want to be with them. And I can't imagine opposing them. Like, there's a fear of Jesus in this moment where it's like, who can stand against this guy? I think of starstruck moments I've had. Like, I picked up Big Daddy Weave when we had a concert here. I was the van driver from the hotel to the venue. And they're like coming out of the hotel, and I'm thinking of like my line that I'm going to say, I'm not the biggest Big Daddy Weave fan, but I'm aware that they're popular and a lot of people like them. So it's like, I want to make a good impression. And I'm like, okay. So when they get in, maybe I'll be like, oh, get on in, Big Daddy. And stupid. Yeah, I'm gonna weave you through the traffic and get you there today. Oh my gosh, starstruck. You just feel like I have this respect and reverence for this person, and I'm guessing that's what they felt with Jesus. But it's like that times a million. It's like I feel safe in this fear and respect I have for this person. But if I were to be outside of whatever this person's doing, they're the most terrifying thing on the planet. Not death. Not bad situations, not poor health, not losing material items. I don't need to be afraid of those things. I need to be afraid of this person in the most beautiful way. And so what in your life is a healthy fear and what's an unhealthy fear? I look at the healthy fear that I have in life of not wanting to be outside of God's will. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be disobedient to God. And I say, Jesus, yeah, I want to follow you, but I'm going to go do it my own way. I always know how that's going to go. And it's taught me how to be afraid of not walking with Jesus in a healthy, healthy way, because I would so much rather the power and the relationship and the love and joy and peace of walking with Jesus than being away from him. It's like wandering away in a dark alley from your friend who can like go Hulk mode. It's like, I would be way more afraid of, especially like, I couldn't imagine opposing this person now and saying what you say doesn't matter. I fear that person. But I also think of the things that are unhealthy fears in my life. Like, I have unhealthy fears that, what are my unhealthy fears? Like, this is a deep moment. Hold on, I didn't prepare for this. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I have unhealthy fears of, not having enough money or enough stuff. I have unhealthy fears of people not liking me. I have unhealthy fears of not being enough for people. I have unhealthy fears of my life ending sooner than I want it to. I have unhealthy fears of bad health or something going wrong with me, and that gives me anxiety and worries and things like that. I have unhealthy fear of failure. And I spend so much time on being afraid of those things that I like use all my energy on that instead of just having a fear of God and saying like, actually, perspective shift in terms of the storm that is in my life. I don't need to be afraid of that. Just like the disciples were like, we were afraid of the storm, but now we are absolutely terrified of Jesus. But in this respect, awe, reverence, some people would call it worship. When we talk about worshiping God and the fear of God, I know it's confusing. Like, yeah, he is scary because he's so big and powerful, but you have to also remember this is the same God who died on a cross for you and loves you no matter what and will give you 1,000 second chances. But at the end of the day is saying, I've forgiven you of your sin. Go and sin no more and follow me. Live life like I am calling you to live. And so you have to decide what you're more afraid of. Are you more afraid of people judging you for following Jesus, or are you afraid of not being with Jesus? Are you afraid of having to change something in your life, or are you more afraid of being apart from the God who created you? What are you more afraid of? I think that's a really good inventory of where your heart is. It's been challenging to me too, to try to figure out where my fears are and where actually my hope and my overall joy is. So, tonight as you look at this scripture, I hope you see Jesus as way more powerful than you ever thought he was. And it's clear that he's not just a good teacher or a prophet, but he's actually God, and that he has control over everything in your life. And at the same time, that same person wants a relationship with you and wants to be your shelter in your storm. Not to always silence every storm, but to help you get through it. How would it make a difference in your life if your fear was placed in the Lord and not on all these other things in the world? Talk about that in your groups.